Off talking about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we had said that the he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given a choice between being wealthy and poverty, and we said that he chose poverty. Why? Right. So it's uh, there is a possibility that everyone can at some point in their life be poor, right? But not everyone has a possibility of being wealthy, right? So being poverty is something that's more attainable, it's more achievable, it's more realistic. What else? So when you're wealthy, do you have more or less options? Right? You tend to have more options. So by the Prophet ﷺ choosing to be in poverty, what does that tell us? I'm sorry? Right? So when you have limited options, how do you right? How do you react and how do you deal with that? And again, it's this idea of practicality and how he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him as rahmatan lil alameen, as a mercy for all people, we truly see how that mercy is and his exemplification and the way that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually modeled a practical life for every single one of us, saying that hey, listen, even in this difficult situation, you can practice and and you can thrive, right? It's not just oh, you just get by. You can actually thrive in this state. Right? You don't need to be wealthy to thrive. Yes. Hmm. Who? You tell me. Who are the ones? The prophets. No doubt. So the other example here that Imam Ghazali actually mentions and he talks about, he says that losing money is better than finding money. Why? Right. Exactly. Hmm. Allahu alam. Like Allahu alam where it comes with. And maybe when we lose money, maybe it's a test, right? Maybe it's a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise our rank. But when the moment we find money, it's actually what? It's a test, right? It's a test versus losing money, which is very different. Which is very different. So I just thought it was like an interesting perspective that he brings up and he talks about. Then he mentions some narrations, which we'll talk about some of them. But a man accompanied Isa alayhi salam, uh, and he said that he would go with him, and they continued along until they came to a river. They sat and they started to eat. They had 3 loaves of bread. They ate 2 of them, and one remained. So Isa alayhi salam, just imagine he's traveling with someone. He sits down. There are 3 loaves of bread. Each of them take 1 loaf. And then Isa alayhi salam, after he finishes eating the bread, he's thirsty. So what does he do? He goes to the river to drink water. And he comes back, and what happens? Right? He didn't find the 3rd loaf. So and I found this response actually very interesting because here he said who took the loaf. He didn't automatically assume what it was him, right? He didn't automatically assume it was him. He said, well, who took the bread, and the man he said, well, he said I don't know. So they continued. They continued on their journey, and they came across a doe. A doe is a female deer, with 2 baby deers. And over here, Isa alayhi salam, he called to one of the fawns, like one of the baby deer, and he slaughtered it. And he, alayhi salam, he said to the one that is slaughtered, he said, live. He brought it back to life, right? This is one of the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him. And it came to life and it left. Then Isa alayhi salam said to the man, he said, Billah. He said, by Allah, who has shown you this miracle? Why did he do this? Why did he kill the fawn and then bring it back to life? Right? I'm sorry? Right, to show this miracle to who? Because remember, miracles in general are, when it comes to the prophets, it's not for the prophet himself, it's for others, right? To show them the truth and veracity of their prophethood. So he did this to what? To show this man that I am like, hey, listen, I'm a prophet. he's like he's like, listen, I'm a prophet. Who took the bread? And what did the man say? He said, I don't know. Right? He still said, I don't know. Then they continued, they got to a lake. Right? They finally get to a lake. Isa alayhi salam, he took the hand of the man and he led him over the water. Like they actually They walked on the water. They walked over this lake, and they reached the other side. And again, why did he do this? Hey, listen, I'm not joking here. I am a prophet. I was sent by Allah Azza wa Jal. Look at these miracles. He said, who took the loaf of bread? He was like, I don't know. So they continued until they got to the desert. They sat down. Isa alayhi salam, he gathered some sand and dust, and he said, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, be gold, right? So he gathered up the sand, and he turned it into gold. And he divided into 3 portions. And then he said, 1/3 is for me, and 1/3 is for you, and 1/3 is for the one who he took the bread. So the man, he said, okay, fine, I took the bread. Then Isa said, he said, then take all the gold. He said, go ahead, take it. Take all of it. Not just 2/3, take all of it. And the man, he encountered 2 men in the desert, and they wanted to take his gold and kill him. And he said, let's divide the gold into 3 portions. And they sent one of them to the village to buy the food. So they found him, and they said, okay, give us the gold. And they took 1 portion of the gold, and they said, listen, go get some food. And the one who went, he said to himself, why should I let them have portions of this wealth? I'll put some poison in the food to kill them. So now they divided the wealth into 3. He took some of this food, he bought some food, and he poisons the food. And the other 2 said, why should we give 1/3 of the wealth to him? So they're all scheming against each other. He said, when he comes back, let us kill him and divide the rest amongst ourselves. So when he returned, they killed him. Then the food that he brought, they ate the food, Allah Mustan. And the wealth remained in the desert with 3 dead men beside it. So in Isa Islam, he passed by them. Right? He passed by them. And he said to his disciples, this is the world. And he said, Hakada ad-dunya. He said, this is the world, so be aware of it. What's the lesson here? Right. Not just don't be greedy. Be truthful. Right? Being truthful, being honest, being upright. Right? These are the lessons that are very important and fundamental. Regardless of the situation. Because at the end of the day, did they die wealthy? They had a lot of gold, right? Did it benefit them? No. And this is the parable of our lives. When we die and when we're buried, where's the wealth going to go? Right, it's going to stay right here, right? It's the moment we die, what happens to the wealth? They start the distribution. And the only thing that goes with me is what I'm wrapped in. So this world, and that's the point that he's trying to make, right? There's no value to this. There's no value to any of this, and we have to keep that perspective. So he says, these stories show the vices of wealth along with what we have previously presented, and Allah knows best. And he closes with this, right? And alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, bi ni'mati tutim as-salihat. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to reach the end of this book. We're going into the next book, which is Riya. And I think it's a very important conversation, and it's a very important topic. So the next book is on Riya and Jah. So Riya we know to be showing off, and Jah is seeking status or seeking fame. He starts off by saying that all praise is due to Allah, the knower of the unseen, overseer of the depths of our hearts, overlooks major sins, knower of what the heart attempts to hide of its most secret defects, the one who sees our innermost wishes and desires, the one who does not accept those deeds except that which is complete and fulfilled, the one free of impurities, of ostentation, yani riya and clear shirk. He alone owns and controls, magnificently free of shirk, and may the blessings be upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his obedient companions, all free of treachery and slander. Peace be upon them all. And he starts with his hadith. He says, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the thing that I fear most for my nation is associating others with Allah. I do not say that they will worship the sun or the moon or idols, but deeds done for the sake of anyone other than Allah and hidden desires. So over here, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he has defined for us riya. So when we talk about riya, where should I look for riya? On which types of actions specifically do I need to be extra wary? Acts of worship. So if I buy a very flashy car, I have a very nice car, is that riyah? No. It's not riyah, right? Because riyah, we said specifically, is for acts of worship. So what is a good example of that? Where would I see, or what examples can you guys share of riyah? Mm. So maybe when I come to the masjid, I pray my sunan, but at home I don't pray. Why? Right, because you want other people to say that, right, that I pray. What else? Yeah, like giving sadaqah so that people will call me generous. Right? These are all very dangerous tasks, and sometimes like we'll even they'll manifest in different ways. Um, Sometimes we'll have the right intention, but sometimes our intention twists and it changes. And and I'm sure many of us have experienced this. But I remember I was sitting in the office one time, and somebody came in, and they said, "Can I use the employee bathroom?" Or like, no, he's like, "Open the employee bathroom." And I said, "Why?" Right? I was like, I don't know you to be an employee. Maybe you are. I don't know, but I don't know you to be an employee. I'm one of the founders of this masjid. Why did he say that? And I don't mean to doubt people's intention, but what is the most likely reason that he said that? Right? He is privileged, and I did this, so I deserve special treatment. So the question we need to ask ourselves is like, am I doing this action because I want special treatment? And if I do want special treatment, who should it be from? It should be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to treat me special, enter me into this paradise, put me in a high position, put me in the center of paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enter us into this paradise. Ameen. Right? But this is the special treatment that I want. And if my goal is to get special treatment here, what's going to happen? Huh? Sometimes I'll get neither, right? Sometimes I'll not get neither. Or even if I do get special treatment, what happens to my deed? It's wasted. And do you see how easily it creeps into our actions and our thoughts? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And in the masjid, in this space, like I'll come, somebody will be sitting here, I'm like, you need to move. What? This is my space. I've been praying here for 20 years. Huh. Does this mean we shouldn't respect our elders? No, of course we should. Right? There's no doubt about that. But there's a difference between me volunteering my space and a person doing what? Coming and demanding it. But this is a problem. This is the issue. If I see somebody elderly, there's nothing wrong with giving that person space. There's nothing wrong with me respecting him. There's nothing wrong with me volunteering special treatment. But for someone to come and demand that special treatment, it's very important for me now to look back at my intention. Why do I feel I deserve this? And if I am able to ask myself that question, then alhamdulillah, I've actually moved toward the path of success. This is how taqwa enters the heart. When we start asking about our intentions behind why we say certain things or why we do certain things. Why am I giving this person salam? Why am I raising my voice? Why am I yelling? Why am I fighting? And many times we'll find, like, especially if there's a gathering and a person starts yelling. What is usually my intention if I get up in a gathering and I start yelling at someone else? I'm sorry? It's seeking attention. Is it not just as possible or just as easy to take that person and go and talk to him? Absolutely. And some people will say, okay, well, I'm doing inkar. I need to refute what he's saying. Because what he's saying is wrong. What is the problem with that? Right? In some sense, it can definitely be that. But I would even take a further step back. How do I know for sure what this person is saying is munkar? Right? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, "Man ra'a minkum munkar, falyughayyir." Right? Whoever amongst you sees a munkar, he should change it. If this person is telling me to pray like this, or he's telling me that there's a difference of opinion in this, is that munkar? Is that evil? If it was evil, how can you have a difference of opinion? It's like the scholars differ over lying, right? They differ over zina. There's no difference of opinion in those things. And who defines what is munkar? Allah and His Messenger. Simple. And what are the things that we know and we agree upon that are munkar? Examples. Huh? Lying, stealing, murder, zina. If I see those things, I have every right to say something. Every right. Right? Because no one's going to come and be like, well, akhi, there's actually there's a difference of opinion on zina. It's like, no, there's no difference of opinion. Not praying, right? Not giving zakat, not fasting, right? These things agreed upon. There's no doubt about it. But if someone is saying like, oh, you're letting the people pray ahead of the Imam, it's like, well, akhi, there's a valid difference of opinion amongst the scholars. And nobody allows praying in front of the Imam, but there's a difference of praying ahead of him. Or, oh no, he's praying the wrong way, or he's doing this, he's doing. Akhi, sit down, investigate, speak, ask questions. Like we said, the munkarat, clear, 100%. In those issues that there's a difference of opinion on, I have every right to ask. I have every right to engage, right? I have every right to speak to that person. But do I have any right to now disparage him and put him down? No. So why is Riya so problematic? He takes this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, saying that it's something that many times we are not even aware of. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Oh, yes. So the thing is, there's a difference between disparaging someone and yelling at someone and correcting someone, right? Because is it possible that somebody misspeaks or somebody says something wrong? So when you have the situation where you have an elderly woman and she challenges Omar, and there's a big difference between challenging someone and putting someone down and yelling at them. Do you agree? So if I disagree with someone and I said, like, Sheikh, what about this? It's a very different attitude than me saying that, hey, you're wrong. Why are you teaching the people this? Or why are you saying this? It's a very different attitude. And this is the same thing this woman did. She's like, well, what about Allah's statement here and here and here? And it became an engagement. Umar radiallahu anh, he's like, no, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm mistaken. And this culture of challenging is healthy. I think me personally, I think it's good. It shows a few things. Number one, that the people are comfortable enough to challenge the person. And that's very telling of the person being challenged, that he opens it. That he opens the floor for this is very telling of Umar radiallahu anh. He didn't tell her, he's like, I'm Amir al-Mu'mineen, who do you know? You know who I am? I'm Ashar al-Mubashirin. Right? I was chosen the Khalifa after, the second Khalifa after the Prophet ﷺ. Like, do you understand my position and who I am? He didn't do that. He allowed it. It's a sign of his humility, radiallahu anh. And secondly, it shows the ability and the comfort to even challenge. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Right? Before that, He says, أَتِيُوا اللَّهَ وَأَتِيُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولُو الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. Meaning that there's no absolute obedience to them. And if they're doing something against the Quran and the Sunnah, what can I do? I can challenge them. And we have a hadith, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, right? Very famous. Marwan, he gets up for the Eid prayer and he starts giving khutbah. Abu Sa'id, he grabs his clothes before he starts walking on the minbar. He's like, bro, what are you doing? Like the khutbahs after the salah, it's not before. And not just that, he was like, Ya Khabith. He's like, vile one. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, why are you getting up on the bumper to give a khutbah when the khutbah for Eid is supposed to be after the salah? Marwan goes to him. He's like, man, that's how you guys did it back in the day. This is how you guys used to do it. And he said, and if I gave the khutbah after the salah, no one's gonna listen to me. Allah understand. So there's an absolute, I think, a culture of challenging and a culture of asking. This is something that it's not something that started with Umar. It's actually something that started with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have the story of was it Barira? Who's the one who asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after she became free and her husband wanted to stay married with her? I forgot her name. But anyway, so there was a Sahabiya. There was a female companion. And what happens is that if you have two slaves that are married and the woman becomes free, she has a choice on whether she wants to continue her marriage or not. So the man, he went to the Prophet ﷺ, he's like, Ya Rasulullah, like I really love her, like, and she's like she doesn't want to stay married to me. So he was like, okay, let me go talk to her. So he goes and he talks to her and he's like, he's a good man, why don't you stay married to him, etc., etc. And she says to him, she's like, Ya Rasulullah, atamurani? She's like, are you ordering me to do this? Look at the relationship that they had with the Prophet ﷺ. She didn't just, she was like, oh, the Prophet ﷺ said it. She wanted clarification, like, are you ordering me to do it or are you advising me? Because if you're advising me, I'm not interested. Another situation where this is very similar. On Badr, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he set up base camp. A companion came up to him. He said, Ya Rasulullah, was it inspired to you to take this place? He said, no. He said, then we should set up camp over there. He said, this isn't a good place to set up camp. So this culture of challenging, right? This culture of engaging, this is something, again, it's very healthy for the Muslim community, and it shows us that not one single person has absolute control. And this is, I'll take it even a step further. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says to Allah, Arini kayfa tuhyi al-mawta. He says, Ya Allah, show me how you bring life to death. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to him. He says, Awalam tu'min? He said, do you not believe? He says, no, I just want to bring peace to my heart. And show me the mechanism. Show me the mechanism of how this happens. Or show me how this happens. Because I want to bring this up. So this idea of intellectual curiosity, this idea of questioning, is something that it's very much ingrained in our religion. And even some of the polemic schools, they have something called nadar, right? Like this skepticism. And healthy skepticism is something that will always bring more iman. Meaning, the more questions I ask, what happens to my belief in Islam? Right? It gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And a lot of people who come to me and they're like, Sheikh, I have waswasa. Like I have these doubts, and I try to push these doubts away. What do you think a good advice for him is? Engage the doubts. Be like, okay, what doubts do you have? Well, sometimes I think this. I was like, okay, let's logically walk through it. Do you think that's possible? And why do you think it's not possible? Well, no, it's not. It doesn't make sense that there would be more than one Allah. It doesn't make sense that there would be more than one God. I was like, why? Well, because then who would be in control? No, there has to be one God. I was like, does that make sense to you? Like, yes. I was like, okay, so every time you had that whisper, what can you do? I can answer it, and I can engage it. And that's what's important, that we understand how to engage with our doubts. Because what is another word for iman? Yaqeen, conviction. How do I gain conviction? By answering doubts. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find time and again, it's very logical how we engage with many issues in coming to yaqeen, in coming to iman. So asking questions, very healthy. I have no issue and no problem with that. Mumtaz. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. You spoke of the truth. Yeah, and that's what actually caught them off guard, right? For them, it was normal for a Bedouin man, like, because they tend to be rough mannered, right? And they'd be like, Muhammad, what about this, this, and this, right? They would just walk in. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he'd be like, come, sit down. Oh, what's the problem? What's the question? What are you asking? So when Jibril came and he asked, they were less shocked. The things that they were shocked about was like, all right, his clothes are clean, his hair is clean, right? He walked right. So this guy, he walks up to the Prophet ﷺ, and they're like, okay, we're not. What's going on here? His clothes are totally clean. His hair is, made. What's happening here? What's going on? And none of us know him. So if he was a traveler, he would have what? Right? He have some dirt. Like his clothes would be dirty, his hair would be disheveled, would be messed up. It's like, but this guy's totally clean, and none of us know him. Something's going on here. And then he asked the Prophet ﷺ, which was okay. They said, okay. He was asking the Prophet ﷺ questions. But then after the Prophet ﷺ answered, what would he say? He would confirm what he said. He said, you've spoken truthfully. And they're like, wait, does this guy know who he's talking to? Like, does he understand who he's engaging with? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And that's what caught them off guard. But this idea, the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't tell him, don't ask questions. He didn't tell him, no, you have no right to understand these. I'll explain them. I'll tell you what these things are. So it's important, again, to ask questions. And this culture of questioning within our Muslim history is something that is important. That's how we reach where we are. If you don't ask questions, then we'll never be able to get answers. So, yes. So, yeah. hmm Yeah. Yeah. Or sometimes he would invite questions. It's like when he stepped up on the member, right? Ameen. He stepped again. Ameen. He stepped again. Ameen. And the companions, what is the natural? It's like, Ya Rasulullah, why are you saying Ameen? What's going on? Huh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Mm-hmm. And we encourage. I still have questions, by the way. So it's important again. Why is it important to ask and to engage? And because those are the things that are going to put my heart at ease. Otherwise, if I never answer those questions, what happens? I always have that trepidation, right? Like I always have that anxiety, right? Yeah, sure, absolutely. And not just that, they might have questions, right? And then you're like, well, I don't know. I didn't really think. I never really thought about that. Yeah. So, and it's understandable. And the thing is, like, the more comfortable we get with our religion, the easier it is to practice it because that conviction is there, and that's what the idea is behind iman and yaqeen and conviction. So here, what happens is that when a worshipper falls into riya, he's fallen into sin, right? Essentially, he's fallen into sin, and that is because of some desire, right? Whether it be a desire to please people or to please others, but pleasing other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what happens is that, all right, well, instead of doing sin, he will start to do good deeds. Why? Because now he's looking for acknowledgement, right? He's looking for that audience. And he says that when he does the good deeds, like instead of sin, what he's doing is like he starts doing good deeds because the other people now they look at him and he feels happy. And now remember, like Ghazali, he does this a lot, right? Creating those feedback loops and understanding why it is we get caught in them. Because every time I do this good deed with riyah, I get validation from others around me, which makes me want to do it more. Yes. It can be, but it's not necessary because we know that the nifaq it destroys belief, right? But riya it destroys actions. And what happens is that when we get caught in this loop, we enter a state of ghafla. Tafadhal. Riya is like ostentatiousness or showing off. There's different ways to translate it. I use the Arabic because it's representative of a religious concept, right? Versus showing off is very general, right? And it could be in anything. It's not necessarily in a religious um, frame. So you fall into ghafla, meaning that you become so accustomed to this that this is now your norm. And this ghafla, it leads to more praise, right? You're actually reaching a state where people are now praising you. You've completely forgotten about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because instead of Allah's praise, you're worried about the praise of the people. People will flatter you. People will respect you, right? So subhanallah, like how this chain of events happens, even though we look at the person and we think, what? He's pious. Right? We're like, man, this person is pious. They're righteous. And all of these things, like, it just leads to so much positive, like, look at the positivity that this leads to just from the apparent actions that people make dua for you, or people will seek dua from you, right? Like, if you apparently are pious, people will come to you and they'll seek dua from you and they'll ask from you and they'll think that they'll give you special treatment now because, like, you're so and so, or, like, we see this person like this. And it just feeds, right? All of these things just feed that ghafla. It just feeds that avoidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how does the special treatment come about? Discounts, people will bring you food, people will bring you clothing. And subhanAllah, right? Like we said, Ghazali, he could be talking about today, right? But Ghazali, how long ago did he die? He died like 900 years ago. So this is not a new concept. This is something that, unfortunately, is old and has been part of our tradition. So this special treatment, it makes a person feel loved. And being beloved, you want to seek more special treatment. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, instead of a state of ghafla, he's in a state of dhikr. Yes. Mm-hmm. Uh, so the reason that Imam Ghazali talks about this first, he said, because this is the one that's easy to fall into. And if we understand the mechanism, what can we do? We can break it. And we can fight it. Mm-hmm. They're they're thinking about their actions, but why are they doing them? Right? They're getting all of these benefits, and this becomes a trick from the shaitan. Because what is ghafla? Right? If we actually think about ghafla, what does that mean? Like, it's just being heedless. You basically, what am I not thinking about? I'm not thinking about Allah. In the moment I stop thinking about Allah, well, my heart is a vessel, right? All of our hearts are vessels, right? It's like a cup. Something is going to fill it. Something. The heart is a vessel that will never stay empty. There'll always be something that will be poured into it. And that could be either the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it can be the love of people and praise and special treatment. Totally sweet. Mm-hmm. So it depends. Meaning that if I'm in a public setting and they're saying we need $10,000 for a project, if I'm doing it because I want to encourage others and I want the congregation to feel happy that we're getting the money for this project, I think that's a wonderful opportunity. But if I fear for myself, and if I know myself, I'm like, man, if I do this, I'm going to get caught up in the people. Then I have to, like, it's a very personal decision. That's the issue with a lot of these things, right? It's not meant to be a discouragement of doing actions publicly. It's meant to be an encouragement of what? We're checking our intention. That's what it's for. So, is it wrong to give a sadaqah in public? No, I don't think so. I think because it can be very encouraging for some of us, right? Like, if I see somebody younger than me giving money, right? Like, if I see a child giving money, it makes me feel shy, right? It makes me feel shy, like, man, this kid is, you know what I mean? Like, this kid is giving money. Like, no, I have to give something too. Yeah. Sure. So how do I deal with that attention? No, no, attention. So, yes, it brings others' attentions to me. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. How do I deal with it now? What should I do? Uh, I have to stay focused. Remember, we're talking about when you talk about dhikr and ghafla, when you talk about heedlessness and remembrance, what am in that moment, what should I try to do? I should remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more. And I should ask myself, like, remember, what was my intention for doing this? Why did I do this? Yes. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Hmm. It, of course. Yes. So it's actually I'm saying so it's amazing how the methods and the techniques of shaitan, it's not singular, right? He's not going to just try to get you with riyat. He's going to try to get you to do what now? To stop you from doing the deed. He's like, nah, man, if you do this, then people are going to say this, or they're going to talk about this, and they're going to, right? So it's a balance that has to be there. And how do we balance, right? By staying by staying focused, by staying focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's like, no, this is a good deed, and I'm doing it for Allah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. And I ask Him to give. You know what I mean? And we have to remind ourselves, and we have to have that. Like those internal conversations are very very important. Because what is taqwa? When we talk about taqwa, when we talk about God consciousness, when we talk about awareness, what does taqwa actually look like? Right? Sure, but where is taqwa? Right? It manifests in our interaction with others, but essentially the Prophet ﷺ, he said taqwa hahuna. In order for me to manifest those actions correctly, I need to ask myself the right questions. Uh-huh. Allahu Akbar. The, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. What is taqwa? Taqwa is like navigating a thorned path. And that's a beautiful example. Why? Because as I'm navigating, is there ever a time where I'm like, whew, and I just start walking? I'm constantly what? I'm constantly watching where I'm stepping, where I'm going. Totally safe. No, no, no. Absolutely. I opened the door when I said we should ask questions, right? I created the problem for myself. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, yeah. We do that too. We do that too. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, here. Okay. Sure. Hmm. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Sure. Mm. Yeah. Uh-huh. So I have a question for you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was doing a collection in Medina, open collection, and he said, we need money. We need to purchase arms. There, we're in a dire situation, and he said this publicly. And who steps forward? Umar. He steps forward, and the Prophet ﷺ asks him publicly. He says, he said, Ya Rasulullah, take this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he asks him, what? How much have you left for your family? He said, I've left half of my wealth, Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet ﷺ continues the plea. And guess who? And then who steps forward? Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. He steps forward. He said, Ya Rasulullah, take this. He says to Abu Bakr, how much have you left to your family? And he said, Allah and His Messenger. So doing public appeals and stating publicly, if it was a problem, what would the Prophet have done? He would have taken the money and he would have made dua for them. But it's so public that you have narrators. There are other people who are sitting and they're listening and they're hearing the Prophet ﷺ, that we know today through these ahadith, from these stories, who they were, how much they left, and what the Prophet ﷺ, how he responded to them. So I don't think innately and essentially this is problematic. I think we need to work much harder on ourselves, and we need to know ourselves as well. If I know that I'm the type that cannot deal with the attention, then what is it better for me to do? To give it discreetly. But if I'm the type that I love seeing the people happy, and you know what I mean, like not because I'm seeking it, because is it wrong for me to bring happiness to a Muslim? The Prophet ﷺ, he said what? Al-ibtisam fi wajhi akhiq sadaqah. He said smiling in your brother's face is a charity. Why? What does the smiling do for the other person? Right? It warms their heart, right? It makes me feel good. It makes me feel happy. So in encouraging happiness in our brothers and sisters, I think that's something that's very healthy, is something that's very good. And the Prophet ﷺ, I believe that was one of the intentions behind publicly declaring what Umar and Abu Bakr had brought forward, right? To inspire the other Muslims. So if I'm one of those people where like I can handle the inspiration of others, then I should do it publicly. And I encourage such people to do it publicly. But if I know I'm not from those people, then I should give it discreetly for sure. But is there a preference? I think there is a time for this, and I think there is a time for that. I don't think there's a general rule that can apply. Because there are some situations where even the person who likes to inspire others, maybe sometimes it's better for him to also give it privately. And for that person who's private, sometimes it's good for him to also give publicly. But it's, again, you know where the balancing is? It's the balancing of the heart. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our hearts balanced. So the special treatment, it gets confused for diyana. It gets confused for religiosity. And what has happened is he's ended up fooling himself. But he's gone through all of these steps now. And all he's ended up doing was fooling himself. Where does this lead him to? Right, this unfortunately it'll eventually manifest in his actions. Unfortunately, it'll manifest in his actions. And if a person is honest with himself, there are things that we love, right, as human beings. And the more we try to remove those vices from our heart, Imam Ghazali, he says, well, the last thing to leave the heart of a person is leadership, right, riyasa. He said this is the one thing that's the toughest to actually remove from the heart. And why do you think he said that? Huh? Yeah, it definitely is, but how did he, like, so Imam Qushayri, how did he qualify that? Where did he get that from? Maybe. I'm sorry? History. It's very simply. What has caused the most bloodshed of human history? Huh? Power. Simple. Throughout human history, what has caused the most deaths and the most conflict is seeking power and leadership. And what does that tell us? That this is the hardest and most difficult thing to remove from the heart. Otherwise, if it was something that was small, we wouldn't even see it. It wouldn't even be an issue. And an example of this is like, okay, well, everybody loves money. Does everybody love money enough to steal it? Like, what percentage of people steal? Is it most people or some? Huh? One person? La ilaha illallah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, but let's find that person. So, right? I mean, there are many people, but if you look at in like in the broad scale of humans, it's a smaller percentage, right? It's not that much, even though we all love wealth. But this leadership is the thing that has killed humans time and time and time again. It's time for adhan, but inshallah we'll continue next week. Wallahu alam wa sallallahu ala khairi khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa jazakumullah khair.